steam rooms in a regular setting can actually help in terms of boosting your immune system. Right, topic at hand, steam rooms. We're going to go over the what, why, and the science behind it, and really how you can implement that into your life. Let's start with the what, Bosted.
Sure. Steam rooms, a room filled with steam. Widely known in a lot of common locker rooms and gyms. I find the history of them fairly interesting. They've been around forever, widely used during the Roman Empire, very widely used in the Roman Empire, then like the Turkish and Ottoman empires. I know I just skipped a bunch of years, but basically they've been around a very, very long time, much longer than many may realize, and are not that well studied, as I learned while researching for this podcast.
I found that as well, and just widely, no surprise, and if you've heard us from the previous episode, the sauna, you're going to notice that there are as we go through this, a few benefits that are very similar. However, when we start digging a bit deeper, it's interesting what the different types of, dry heat versus wet heat and what that can do. I did not research the history of that, but no surprise that the Europeans leverage this a hell of a lot more than us Americans.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it appears to be big in India as well. I found some research papers from India. But I think an interesting place to start may be categorizing steam rooms and kind of showing how it fits with saunas, dry saunas, and with hot tubs. Because I think a lot of people may have access to one of the three or have experienced one of the three. So I think as we go through this podcast, we'll compare and contrast a little bit. But just to give folks the big picture of it, saunas, in terms of the actual temperature of them, saunas are the hottest. Steam rooms are a lot cooler temperature-wise, like 120 degrees Fahrenheit to 130 degrees, which is 110 Celsius or so. And then whirlpools are like 104 degrees, or whirlpools, also known as hot tubs, are about 104 degrees Fahrenheit, or I don't know the Celsius conversion offhand, but it's interesting because even though saunas are the hottest, because they don't have as much humidity in the air, they allow sweat to evaporate more readily from your skin, which cools your body. It's the coolest temperature on your skin, and your core temperature actually takes the longest to heat up in a sauna, even though it is the highest temperature. I found that to be very interesting. There's a pretty, one of the best studies I could find comparing the three is from Duda in 1987, compares the three of them. And, just really interesting. I found that the three of them, I had not previously categorized them that way. So something to consider as we go through this. And part of the reason for the different benefits between sauna and steam rooms are the fact that, steam rooms, you are not nearly as hot. The steam is not as hot, but you retain a lot more body heat because of the higher humidity and the higher water content in the air, disallowing the sweat to evaporate more readily from your body.
That's right. And I think that's a good segue into really why it works. And I think that you touched on it, but let's start with some of the benefits. And again, leaving a teaser for the previous episode, because I highly encourage everybody to listen to what we did, the breakdown on saunas. But what I found to be different from saunas that steam rooms are really efficient with, one is your skin. And so you touched on that, and actually being able to have that moisture on your skin. Now you're able to, some of the studies and the information I was looking at, it's opening up your pores, right? So it's able to clean your skin because it's loosening some of that dirt and debris buildup. Now, we might not, from previous episodes, that may not, in terms of hitting the stat sheet, it's not like, you're lowering your risk of XYZ, although there's some that's very similar, again, to saunas. But with your skin, everybody wants clean skin, right? And we're thinking of our face. That's still really important to me. And I think it's important to most people when you look at the skincare industry, when most people have this tool readily available at your local gym. And I thought that was just, I knew that, but I actually didn't know exactly the reasoning behind it and how it's able to. So that's one benefit. Not sure if you have anything to add to that.
Just a quick add, skin, definitely a big benefit. You'll notice in a facial, if you get a facial where they, detox the shit from your face and then, usually scrub on some other shit. Again, I'm not a master in facials, but they always start with steam. They always start with steam and they extract your pores like immediately after you've been steamed. So again, widely used as a pore opener for a while. And again, I think comparing it to a sauna, because you have that moisture in the air, it kind of rinses your skin better, for lack of a better term, and allows, again, the pores to be open and all that good stuff. Without being the chemicals of a hot tub, which is certainly not good for your skin.
Really good point. And so another one that I actually did not know is relieving some of the symptoms from cold and congestion. Almost even to say too that steam rooms in a regular setting can actually help in terms of boosting your immune system. Mm-hmm. One piece really being the steam being able to loosen up the mucus, phlegm. This can help clear not only congestion, but also when you're thinking of allergy season, right? It's almost mm-hmm. like a doomsday prep for the inevitables coming. And I thought that was really interesting that the steam room helps. That's a bit different than the sauna.
Absolutely. I mean, you're inhaling this, bacteria and viruses don't like, heat in general. Heat is a very good way to kill viruses and pathogens that are in your body. That's why fevers are a thing. Fevers are the body's natural defense mechanism to a lot of those things. And first off, just being in a sauna or steam room and raising your core temperature is essentially giving yourself an induced fever. So good for that reason. But the steam room, you're breathing the steam into your lungs, as you said, helps loosen mucus and is good for your lungs in a variety of ways, but also can help kill a lot of the stuff that may be in there. One thing that I almost couldn't believe, so I got the reference at hand, which we will certainly link. You mentioned steam rooms being good for colds, right? Colds and flu and whatnot. There was a study in 2022, Francisco Ramirez in the lab of Pershrockin, hydrothermotherapy in prevention and treatment of mild to moderate cases of COVID-19. And hydrothermotherapy is just a fancy way of saying a steam room. And they put people in steam rooms who had COVID, and with remarkable result, like 90% of them had it cured either much faster than others or in much faster fashion. They were not instantly cured, but it made a dramatic effect in ridding COVID of their system, both symptomatically and when they tested them later. So I thought that was very interesting.
Take that, ivermectin. No, that's actually pretty incredible. Like I said, when I was going through that, I thought that to be very interesting. Where I used the scenario doomsday, where you're literally prepping for allergy season. You're prepping for the sickness to come. But now that's the most recent, right? Because COVID is still around, but COVID was, it stopped our entire world. And the fact that something that, call it exactly what it is, it has taken out. I'd be actually interested in understanding also in terms of whether or not age plays a factor in that. Right? Because when we look at, as well as also body type, body composition, so we know that COVID really affected a lot of the elderly and those who are obese. And so I wonder also it having something to do with in terms of boosting your metabolism a bit. Like I'd like to understand if that same study, if that had anything to do with, the elderly as well as anybody that was obese. I don't know
This
morbidly.
specific study, no. I believe they were all like middle-aged men without any big health issues outside of that. So that study, no. But again, as we alluded to before, one thing I found very interesting. I'm actually going to do a live test. Look on Google Scholar. Saunas versus steam rooms. There is incredibly little literature out there on steam rooms. And again, just to kind of make my point, right? You go to Google Scholar, type in saunas, and you get how many results? 68,000 results. And for those who don't know, Google Scholar is a widely used, obviously it's Google, but searches scholarly articles. And yeah, steam, you get about 1/10 the amount of results. So steam rooms or hydrothermotherapy or whatever search parameter you put in leads to a lot less. So certainly, it's very interesting that a study like that can come out that it helps cure COVID. Again, I'm not suggesting that people do this to cure themselves of COVID, but I think that it is it needs to be studied much more. And in the conclusion of a few papers that I read, that seemed to be the consensus that, hey, we found this really cool thing, but we think that this needs to be studied a hell of a lot more.
Yes. The fact that hasn't made news, that we don't know about that, and the majority of the public does not know about that, is actually quite concerning. There's also something to be said too, and I'd be curious, based on one of your points earlier, when you think of like athlete's foot, you think of just some of these like ringworm. Do steam rooms have that, where it becomes a feeding ground for bacteria because it's not as high as the sauna, but it's at that point where it's tolerable? And I'm curious, does bacteria have the benefit of growing more rapidly in those types of environments?
That's a very interesting you asked that question, because I happened to read an article on that as well. And it said, yes, more bacteria does grow in a steam room versus sauna. The amount was not that crazy. It wasn't airborne or anything, but they said on surfaces it can grow a little bit more. Basically, and now we're heading into the practical side here, into our step 3, what it is, why it works, and how to apply it to your life. But basically, don't go butt ass naked in the steam room. That's the moral of the story. Like the research study I read was like, I don't even know if it was a research study. It might not have been peer-reviewed science. I think it may have just been in like a medical site. So take that with what you will. But it just said, hey, if you're wearing like a towel around you, even you're not going to get anything, of the sort. But you might not want to go in butt ass naked.
Yeah, towel, sandals, people. It's not
exactly.
We're not asking for a lot here.
Exactly.
And as somebody who's ventured into the steam rooms a few times, there's a couple people I wish that would just follow that advice.
Absolutely.
My favorite though is that, and I'll go into the study of it, but people, when it comes to the delayed onset of muscular soreness, steam rooms, or call it wet heat, often has been linked to feeling the relief of muscle soreness much faster. Now, I want to go into this just quick study where they took, this was 100 young subjects, and now they didn't specify exactly the age of these folks, and I'll put a link to this. But for 15 minutes, they were accomplishing just squats. And so they measured them for the next 3 days. They used for one subject group heat, dry heat, and then the other subject group moist heat. And this was immediately after exercise. Now, the results reveal that the greatest pain reduction was shown immediately after application for moist heat. Now, that's really interesting. Now, when we
Versus
look
doing
at
the squats with no heat.
no, so they were just doing. I think that this was in regular room temperature. They were just doing the
Understood.
heat. So, and this is also to be noted too that this is how they use this. This wasn't actually. I think the moist heat was more, chemical moist heat, where the dry heat was more of a. It wasn't necessarily a sauna, but more of a heating pack,
Right.
and they had it directly applied. So, essentially, what the conclusion was that you were able to receive enhanced benefits with 25% of the time, and they measured these folks. Looking here, the application of heat would dry for 8 hours on the application for one test group, and then the moist heat for only 2 hours of application. And so with 25% of the time, you were able to benefit from, I won't say instantaneous pain relief.
Much quicker.
That's it.
Got it.
And so, I'm not sure how that compares, or if you saw that study, or if you saw anything when you were doing your research. But I thought that was really interesting, just as somebody who does work out fairly often, who, if I haven't done leg day in about a week, I'm always feeling it. This enlightens me in a number of ways, not only just on conversations to be able to talk about that and recommend these things, but also now to put in practical use for myself.
Absolutely. And again, I think let's move to our third point here, the practical application. But that makes perfect sense to me based on that first study I read from Duda, where steam rooms will increase your core temperature a lot more, right? That's why it's so good for muscle relaxation. It increases your core temperature, and muscles respond well to heat, like a heating pad, right? You're going to get a similar effect to a heating pad when you go in a steam room versus a sauna. So I think that's a very important point to make. And again, I found very little literature on steam room versus sauna. However, I know a lot of gyms typically have both. So how the hell do you decide, you're done working out, which you should go in? Because I would imagine most are using this as a recovery tool post-workout. You certainly can use it pre-workout to help loosen up. I use that in my daily protocol after the cold plunge to loosen me up a bit. But, versus sauna versus steam room, how do you pick which to go in? You just finished your workout. How do you finish which to go in? And as you just said in your last point, if you know you're going to be very sore, or you are already very sore, it may actually be better to go in the steam room for that immediate effect of pain relief. If you're looking for a more overall health benefit in terms of mood, I think sauna is associated a lot more with the neurological effects, the dynorphins that release the endorphins that, increase your dopamine and related neurotransmitters. Saunas have been studied a lot more for longevity. So I think, kind of overall health and mood, plus those heat shock proteins, which is a key part of saunas. These, basically recovery agents that are proteins that are released in your blood that help your DNA and other parts of your cells essentially refold when they become denatured. Other proteins in your body become denatured. There will certainly be less of those in a steam room because there is less heat shock, because there is less heat. But if you're looking for just that muscle soreness relief, based on the data the research that I encountered, I think a steam room would be where you'd want to go.
So where do you think, do you think steam room also, because going back to also in terms of preparation for, sickness or just boosting of your immune system, how are you implementing this on a regular basis? It's obviously could be a reason for, hey, I know I'm going to be sore, or I am really sore. Mm-hmm. But I also see this as, I want to do this 3 to 4 times a week, and I want to be in there 10 to 20 minutes in each of my sessions. How does that sit with you?
Yeah, it sits well. I mix it in randomly between steam room and sauna. I like both of them a lot. I think they both provide benefit. I like stretching more in the steam room. So if I have a muscle that's really tight, as we know, steam room heats up your muscles a lot quicker. I'll go in the steam room and stretch it out. Plus, there usually happens to be a lot more room to stretch in a steam room versus a sauna. It usually has 2 tiers of bench, and in my experience is usually a smaller enclosure. I also say, again, there's no research around this, I don't think, but porque no los dos, right? I'll sometimes start in the steam room because that'll heat me up quicker, and then I'll finish in the sauna. So an interesting way to kind of, gauge that as well. I track my heart rate very closely. I have a specific app that I made on my smartwatch that tracks my what zone of cardio I'm in while I'm in the steam room or sauna. In different zones of cardio. Again, I need to research this, but basically, the higher the zone is, obviously the higher the zone is, the higher your heart rate is, and the different zones are associated with different factors. Like zone 3, I think, is 140 to 155 beats per minute, somewhere like that, and that's commonly regarded as intense cardio or a good spot. You want to be in at least zone 3, and the sauna gets my heart rate going more than the steam room. The steam room takes a little bit longer in terms of heart rate to get me there, again, because it's not quite as hot. But they both get me there. So apologize for the long-winded answer, but no, I like them. I like them both.
No, well, I think what clicks for me is being able to have something, right? You're treating recovery like you treat your workouts, right? There's a warm-up period. Then there's the endurance, the actual activity, right? I believe what you said in our last podcast about saunas was this is weight training for your cardiovascular system. So that's really what the sauna is. Mm-hmm. And then when you look at a cold plunge, well, what are you doing? You're able to cool down. Now, I'm not saying for every single person, steam room, sauna, cold plunge, although I wouldn't hate you for it if that's your routine. But that's when you're looking at recovery. You have to look at recovery the same exact way that you look at training your muscles, training your body. At least that's how I look at it.
No, equally as important. I think that's something that's very commonly overlooked, and something that I've grown a lot in the past couple years is, as my workouts have gotten more intense, if I slip on the recovery routine, especially with, again, steam room, sauna, cold plunge, man, I know it. And within a week or two, I'm hurting so bad that I can't, perform near where I should be able to athletically if I'm, incorporating those different environmental protocols in. And again, it's just very interesting. All 3 of these, I think, have gotten more popular as people have, gotten more interested in them, and more research has come out more on the cold plunge and sauna side versus the steam room. But it's also we figured this out, in the BC times, the Roman Empire, these were very common, and they had to see some benefit, because back then it was a way bigger pain in the ass to build a steam room than it is now, where you attach a hose to the wall and a heating element and some attach it to a water line, right? Imagine that. But think of how much it takes, so much energy to heat water to the point where it boils. Water, of all liquids out there, this is chemistry nerd coming out, but of all liquids out there, there's something called a specific heat, which is how much energy it takes to raise something by 1 degree Celsius. And water takes a huge amount of energy to raise at all. It's very difficult to get water to change its temperature, which is why it's difficult to change your core temperature, because we're large percentage water. But back in Roman times, they had a big, I looked at a diagram of one of the steam rooms back then, and it was this huge pot of water, and they had people, chucking logs on a fire under that and making the water boil, and then it traveled up a chimney into another room. The steam did, and that's where the steam baths were. Think of how much energy that would take to maintain and build and all that. And I don't know about you, but I sure as hell wouldn't be doing all that if I didn't know that there was large benefit.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. And I think it goes back to just keeping it simple. And at least when I look back at history, and I look back at those that had already figured this shit out long before what we did, they were probably on the right track if we made it this damn far to where we're at today. And so, the therapies that we've already talked about, I look at this as the holy trinity. Personally, if I'm looking at the top of the pyramid, though, I really do think that the sauna is the elite amongst the three that we've discussed here. I think all three definitely play a factor, and they should be implemented. But you said it best. It is weight training for your cardiovascular system.
Exactly. And amongst the three, in terms of how to implement this into your daily life, right? Most likely find a gym that has one. Great. But I also know I have a friend whose parents have a steam shower, and there's like additions you can add, not redoing your whole shower, but, basically a shower head that's really fancy and full bodied. And you can make yourself a little steam room in your shower pretty easily. Or just having a really hot shower, you get, obviously some of these benefits we talked about. Hopefully not having the water too hot directly on your skin. But in terms of cold plunge, sauna, steam room, I think steam room is likely the easiest and cheapest to implement in your own house by having whatever shower head extensions or steam extensions on your actual shower. We should look that up after this. I wonder if there's how many products like that are on Amazon, because I'd have to imagine that they exist, and that would be a much better way.
Yep. No, I think so as well. So we recapped. So just as a recap, we've went over, what this is, why does it work, the quick science behind it, and how to make this a part of your daily life. If you have not heard our sessions, our podcasts on cold plunges and saunas, highly recommend that you listen to that, because you're going to be able to put the pieces together on exactly how to implement this. And chances are, if your gym does not have that, depending on where you're at, especially if you're in a city, there are certainly things that you can accommodate. When it comes to steam room, just like you mentioned, there are definitely products out there that can create that benefit for you. There's benefits also with the cold plunge, as well as being able to get that dry heat from what a sauna brings. So I think that's probably a good place for us to wrap it up, unless you have anything else.
I think it is. And quick Amazon search shows that steam generators are like $400 to $500, and you can plug one of those babies into your shower, and you got yourself a baby steam room. So yes, I think that was a fantastic summary, Bruce. If you made it this far with us, we certainly appreciate you listening, and look forward to continuing to talk about these topics.
Peace.